Hello, guys.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to the Jacuzzi Girl Show. My name is Janya.
I'm Acela, and welcome to our show.
For the second episode of April, we are doing our book club. Our book club is this month. We read Good Material by Dolly Alderton. I actually picked the book this month since Acela traumatized me last month, and I decided to pick something more, I guess, like lighthearted than the Julia Fox memoir. It's a fiction book. I saw it online. If some of you guys might know on Instagram, Read with Jenna. She's this woman who has her own book club, and she chooses different books. For one of the months, she chose Good Material by Dolly Alderton. And then I saw that Tinks read it due to recommendations from her followers, and she said that she liked the book. So that's why I suggested to Sal, let's read this book and see what we have to say about it.
I mean, she's also just really famous right now, I think. You know, she has Dear Dolly on Love, Life, and Friendship, and then she has Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. That's like a nonfiction, more autobiographical thing. And before this, I only read the Everything I Know About Love.
Did you like that book?
Yeah, I think I didn't know that weirdly enough, I didn't know she wrote fiction until you said it. I always thought she did like autobiographical things, so I was so surprised. But
when I saw her name at first, I thought that it was all going to be a nonfiction book. And then when I read the summary, I was like, oh, it's actually a fiction book that everybody's reading.
Yeah. But it's funny because I think it's her, you know how she is really funny in her book? Like,
yeah.
It's a really, she has a very specific sense of humor that is actually similar in her autobiography in the novel. So I think she just has this, like, specific sense of humor. And I mean, she's hilarious. But it's the way she describes things. It's so funny.
You think this book was funny, though? Good Material?
Yeah, I was, like, laughing out loud at some parts.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe it's because I read the book. So I put my own interpretation.
British, by the way?
Yeah.
It's like some British dry humor, you know?
No, I thought it was hilarious when, like, the Julian Assange thing, or when he like leaves the voicemail to his ex-girlfriend and she's like, what the fuck?
Obviously you would find something like that funny. Anyways.
Or remember when he runs into his ex-girlfriend and her boyfriend, and then the lady comes out and she's like, oh yeah, we do have the hair follicle boosting shampoo.
Yeah,
and he's just like, I want to die right now.
Yeah, anyways, guys, let me start with the summary so you guys understand without diving into too many details of the book, but read this book if you want to, and then rewatch this episode later. Basically, the summary of the book is this. Andy and Jen have been dating for 4 years, and Jen has broken up with him. The entire book is basically...
Majority of the book.
The majority of the book, yes. Not the entire. The majority of the book is Andy trying to deal with the breakup. From being like, why did she break up with me, to abusing alcohol and just not being a human being for months at a time and still obsessing over her. And then only in the very last chapter do we get Jen's perspective on the breakup, on what led to it, on the start of their relationship, and how she feels about it now, and where she is in her life and in her career. And the ending is kind of, for me personally, the ending is what did it and kind of tied it all together and highlighted many themes that I was not when I was reading Andy's part of the book, the first part, I was like, why am I reading about this guy just moping around for so long? And then the last chapter, it kind of wrapped it all up for me as to why he is the way he is, and the evolution of his character as well, and of hers.
Yeah, because I think in the book, obviously it's from his perspective, and you don't have like the best impression of him, but you definitely see him from his side of his perspective. But when you see him from another person's perspective, it's like, oh, like this makes sense now.
Yeah, definitely. And you're also like, oh, okay, like that's I mean, I guess it's a cool perspective, thinking that there's always two truths to the reality. Her reality was completely different from what Andy was moping about the entire book.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you as a reader have your perception of him.
Yeah.
Different from his. but you have
Yes.
your own, and then you read hers, and then your perception again changes, and you're like, oh,
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, okay, I guess he has these positives, but he has these negatives, and it's an interesting way to actually phrase it because it's like from somebody else's perspective. Sometimes when you're living your life, you don't know what negative traits you have because you don't like. How do you know them if you don't even see them? Like you don't even acknowledge them. Versus somebody else might see them in you and they're like, no, but this is such a glaring issue. You're just so far into it that you cannot even see that you're being so insecure right now. Or
yeah.
yeah,
So throughout the book, basically, Andy doesn't understand why she broke up with him, and he is like obsessed with talking about, like thinking about her, talking about her with his friends, with his family. He does like really crazy shit because he's like really mentally going through it. But it's so funny. Like I literally was laughing out loud in bed. I was like, what the heck just happened right now?
it's also quite modern in the sense that she ties it into the year is 2019, and she like ties in social media with it, like creating like fake profiles, stalking each other, like that entire Instagram thread of like being like they probably blocked, like oh like I hope she knows that I blocked her, and then he creates a fake account to like keep watching her, and like it's kind
Or
of yeah.
Or do you remember when he's like, oh, I want to reread our sexts? So he goes to like WhatsApp and he types it in, but he accidentally messages. So he's like, I want to search up the word cock in our messages, but he accidentally messages her the word cock, and she's like, oh my goodness, like you cannot talk to me this way, like this
Yeah.
is so inappropriate. And then he's just like, oh my god.
It's so funny. Also earlier, what Estella was talking about, the voice message that he left, he basically bumped into one of his exes where he was the initiator of the breakup. And he was like, oh, this is probably how she feels about me. Like, she probably suffered so much. Like, those were his internal thoughts. And then one night he got so drunk that he, like, left her a voicemail being like, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Like, now I understand you because I got broken up with. And she basically thought she was a complete lunatic, you know?
Yeah, he was like, you probably like you were so like taken aback by seeing me, probably hurt you so much. And she's just like, no, dude, I moved on, and you should probably move on too.
Yeah. Anyways, should
so
we?
the
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about the themes that we kind of laid out for this book?
Yeah. So basically, there was actually a lot of thoughts and takeaways that Estella and I had, but we decided to group them up into 4 parts. So the first is breakup and kind of what goes into a breakup, the thought process of a breakup, and the the themes that stem out of their breakup, which is narcissism, and then later on the importance of self-awareness. And
Yeah.
we wanted to talk about the female's biological clock, and like what the urge to have kids is, why have kids, how does that impact our lives?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
So do you want
at
to
the
talk
end,
about the breakup?
we will rate the book. So yeah, let's start with the breakup. Basically, for me personally, is as I said, the book really tied down when I saw Jen's perspective. I don't know if I'm more because I'm a female and my mindset is more female oriented, but I completely understood her reasons for breaking up with him. And what I thought was interesting is when she said, like, what you admire initially is something that ends up annoying you later on. Or the red flags that you ignored in the beginning will become the causes for your breakup. And I agree. I think that's completely true. In the beginning of their relationship, like she was also enamored with him, even though I actually want to give a preface, like a backstory as to who they were. She was a lawyer, right? She was a lawyer.
She was in insurance.
Yeah, and she was very high up in her corporate world. She made really good money. She had her own apartment, basically quite a well-established woman. I believe they met when she was 31, 32.
Yeah, 31.
Yeah. And he was a stand-up comedian, but he was not the best comedian. He did not make a lot of money. He was not that well known, but he kept trying all these years. He did not have his own apartment, and he was kind of like living home to home. And during their relationship, they dated for 4 years. Initially, she talked about how she was so enamored with his free way of life, about how he didn't really care about society norms and standards, and he was just kind of figuring out as he went. And
And that he
later,
was pursuing his dreams, even
yeah,
though like it was not going well. He was still at it.
yeah, and even though it was not the status quo, and that's what she loved about him. But then that was in the end like another one of the reasons why she broke up with him, because she's like, I don't know if I can, how can I even think about starting a family with a person like this who doesn't have his own money, doesn't have a steady stream of income, and even if he did have a steady stream of income, I don't think I could be with a person who's as self-obsessed as Andy was, because his job and in general, like he was always like going out there to get other people's validation and attention, and she already grew past that. So, what do you think, Cecile? I want to ask you about what I said. Like, what you ignore initially is what makes you break up, and what you thought was admirable. Since you have dated somebody for a long time, and in general, like from your own experience, do you think that this stands true?
I think it's definitely true. I think it's a little simplified. I completely agree. I think all the things initially you think are so cool and different about the person, but this is the thing. If you are just doomed from the start in terms of other bigger things, then these things will start to become annoying to you. But I think the difference is if there are bigger fundamental things that are just make you very incompatible, that is what will drive the breakup, that's what will drive the resentment, etc., etc. So for example, with Andy and Jen, I think if he wasn't so self-obsessed and selfish and like, just have these really big fundamental flaws, I don't think it would have been as big of an issue. Like all these things that the differences in like their careers, etc. But because ultimately she's like, he was just really selfish and self-obsessed, and that's what made these little differences such a big deal. So for example, like, the fact that he was a stand-up comedian and he didn't make a lot of money, okay, that's one thing. But the fact that he never even thought about what would happen if she had a child with him. What would he do? Would he give it up and be a stay-at-home dad like he said he would? But she was like, he wouldn't do that.
And
it's like these things.
I think it's also like talking about his selfishness. Like I was telling Estella that I think that he's a narcissist, or he definitely has narcissistic tendencies. But she was talking. It wasn't just about. Okay, like it's one thing about being like, are you even aware of the responsibility that we will have to share if we have a child? Like, what is the progression of our relationship? He's like, oh yeah, we can figure it out. Like, maybe I'll be a stay-at-home dad. But she knew that he was just saying that because he did not even think about it that deeply. Whereas for her, she realized having a child, that also stems into the biological clock conversation. Having a child is literally like she will have to put her life on pause and dedicate her life to raising this human being.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. His selfishness was also stemmed from the fact she was saying how one day she was sick, and I think she's like, over our entire 4-year relationship, it was only once that he brought me a cup of tea. And he would always just leave. He'd be like, okay, like, you're fine. And she was like, it was little things that ended up piling up where I realized that he was just not aware. Or what I thought was interesting that she pointed out during their breakup is she was saying how, I mean, I guess it's natural. Everybody complains about their families to their significant others, being like, oh my God, like my sister or my mom is being crazy right now. The point of your partner, if you're in a healthier relationship, is for your partner to A, be completely neutral, B, if anything, being like, Johnny, I think like it's fine, you're overreacting, like they're still great. Or like, not even overreacting, but being like, oh yeah, that sucks, but like he should never be the one who actively tries to like get them back. Because then it's like, dude, like, yeah, it's okay for me to like talk bad about my family, but you cannot do that. And she said that he did that when he bought her mom a birthday present, that had literally nothing to do with her mom. He bought her a karaoke set. And she was like, what the hell, dude? Like, and her mom like never sang karaoke in her life and she doesn't really enjoy it. And afterwards he was like, wasn't that so funny? And she was like, dude, like, it's not funny. Like, and I think also what led to her breakup is when she started to have to hide her success and how far she was going because he was not doing that well in his career, but she was.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't want to be in a relationship where I don't feel like I have my partner's full support and just without hurting his feelings because of how fragile and sensitive he is.
Yeah, so I think 100%. So what I was saying is, I don't think these little differences that, make you different are the issue. I think they will just kind of add to it. The bigger issue is if the person is selfish, if he's an egomaniac, if he's a bad person, if he's a narcissist, then that is a bigger issue and that's what will lead to your demise. And then the little differences that you thought were adorable, yes, they will become very annoying and they will just add to the realization. As she said, it's not like anything big ever happens. It's like it's an accumulation of things that kind of make you go like, oh, like it kind of points out their character flaws in a way. So like if he was a comedian and he was struggling, but he was a thoughtful, nice, self-aware man, okay. But he wasn't. And so the fact that he was this comedian who was so obsessed with validation and getting laughs, it only exemplified his ego, his self-obsession, and selfishness and narcissism.
Like she was talking about how when he would post something online, he would be checking the post for like 3 days straight and would like not leave his phone. And even when they would travel anywhere, or he would always be like hoping that somebody would notice him, even though all of the gigs he did was really something not noticeable, or as in she was getting tired of his constant
need for validation
and his constant selfishness, thinking only about himself and being insecure about his achievements. And in that regard, she could not be proud of hers in front of him because she didn't want to hurt his ego.
Yeah.
Like, that does not work. I think initially, maybe this, but thing is that remember at the end of the book, she was saying, and then I imagined, let's say Andy did become a stand-up comedian. Let's say he became the most popular one. He managed to make money and everything. She's like, I don't think I was just cut out to be with somebody who's in this industry, because you have to be a certain kind of person to want to go out on stage every night and stand in front of strangers trying to get a joke out of them.
Yeah.
Like that constant seeking of validation and attention and like gratification from that. She's like, I don't think that's in my cards.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he was just, as I said, the little differences are not the issue, but if you have bigger issues, they will become super annoying and you'll be like, oh, how could I find that cute that this guy's like fucking annoying?
100%. And I think personally for me, it was quite tough reading the chapters about the breakup. I've never survived, I've never lived through a big breakup, as in like after dating somebody for many years. I imagine it's very, very difficult. But for me personally, reading through it chapter by chapter of Andy just moping around was low-key just like, please stop. Like, stop thinking about her, like, stop feeling sorry for yourself, like, get out of this rut. And he did actually manage to get out of it. Like, he got into fitness, he started, like, watching what he's eating and started to try to date around. So at least there was that evolution.
But again, it was all very self-obsessed. It was
That's
all
true.
around him.
And it was all around, like he was so unaware of why she broke up with him. But thing is that he is aware of his flaws. He is like, she probably wants a guy who like earns more money. She probably wants this, but they're also all surface level. That's what I'm talking about. With his character, he's so unaware. Like he's so unaware of himself. Like he's unaware of even like so for him, like Jen breaking up was so crazy and out of the blue because that's just the way he is. And she can never change that about him. That's what she was saying. Like, even if he was the most successful, like I cannot change that about him, that he's just not that forward thinking. Like it's like future thinking,
Fundamental character flaw.
Yeah.
That is like what ultimately, caused everything. And, for him, like, it wasn't that he wasn't fit or he was balding like he thought it was. It wasn't about that at all. It was the fact that he was so obsessed with it and that he was making it everybody else's problem. that was what made her crazy.
Yeah, 100%. His reasons. Thing is that as you're reading the book, like as Estelle and I were reading the book, you do not know why she broke up with him because she's the one who initiated and she broke up.
Yeah.
So this entire time he's questioning. He's like, maybe it's probably like as Estelle said, me being bald. Then at one point he's like, maybe it's money. But at the end of the book, when it's Jen's side, you're actually like, oh, okay, this is why she broke up. Also, what think is interesting is that I do think that most women, when they want to break up, they break up in their heads months before the breakup happens. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I remember even with you, I think you broke up with your like months before. Like you would talk about it, and I think even with my other best friends from my school, like I remember how they broke up with their long-term boyfriends, and they would be like, it was like a gradual thing, I would say.
Yeah.
But it was more like a realization hit them after realization hit them, and then they're like, oh, like I think it's fine now if you break up. Like I think you already processed all that information in your head, and you're like, obviously it is still painful, but you already have been processing it for months, like and like having this internal struggle.
Yeah, no, Johnny is right. No, I think you break up months in advance. You kind of start asking your friends like these little things like, oh, like, do you think, maybe if I were single now, like, it would be better for me.
Yeah.
And then at one point you just straight up go like, I think I'm going to break up with him. But the thing is, it's just hard to do the act itself. And I get Jen because you don't want to hurt the person still. Like, it's just such like a, you want to break up, but you're also like,
there's still some love there, no?
Well, I also just think you just don't really want to break up and like be the bad guy. At least in my, and I remember for me, like looking back now, it was wrong.
Yeah.
But I just remember like really, I didn't want to be the bad guy. I didn't want to like, I don't know, it sounds stupid, but I was really hoping that it would be like a mutual decision. And it did happen that way, but I had to wait months for it to happen.
Fair.
Whereas I should have just been like,
think that you had a lead up to it. Like you had one conversation, then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Then you had another conversation, and then that's why it became mutual. But in reality, it was your initiative.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Let's. I think let's just leave it at that.
What I want to talk about is, so I think that when a man really loves you, which is Andy really loved Jen, and she was even talking about how she felt his love, like how he literally after the first night they spent together, he kissed her armpit, which is something that a man who's obsessed with you does. And he loved her a lot. Obviously, he was really struggling, and I think in a way he really thought she was the one for him. And he also was like, probably out of my league, etc. But he still loved her immensely. What I think is that was not pointed out. Not at one point did they talk about Jen's lack of communication then. Because I think that to make a relationship work long term, if your man really loves you, he is actually willing to change for you. Like he will do his very best to change for you. Obviously, if at that point he doesn't, then he doesn't. But I also think that it's not really fair because for him, the breakup was out of the blue. For her, it wasn't because she was ruminating about it for months. And she was even talking about how she felt guilty and she hated this feeling of like not sharing her thoughts with him. Why not share then? I'm sorry, like we all reach, like every single relationship, like I've been in a relationship for 2.5 years now, and I've had so many difficult conversations where I'm like, listen, this is not really working for me in this capacity. And then like my boyfriend would be like, okay, well, this has to change like this. And at different times, but it's like all about listening to each other and trying to change for each other to make it work long-term and better. Obviously, like I think from Jen's and Andy's relationship, from what I gathered, their entire relationship was not bad in a nutshell. Like they had a lot of good moments still, and they still loved each other when they were breaking up. Like it's not like he was abusive to her or anything. It was more like he lacked certain self-awareness in different aspects. But I think that, like I think maybe it's harder for even a woman to change. But for a man who really loves his woman, I actually think he does have the capacity to change because I've seen it personally. And I think it's just about communicating in a constructive criticism way and being like, this is like the steps to improvement, and this is like how like we have to move forward. Because I don't think like I don't know. I think women like in general are more aware of themselves. B are more forward thinking. They're like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this. Like, ask any woman, especially any woman who's a mother and a wife, how many things she thinks about. And then ask how many things the husband thinks about. The husband mainly thinks about his job, period. She's like, okay, wait, is my son dressed? Does he have his shoes on? I have a work call in 2 minutes, and then I have to stop by the grocery store to buy new sponges. Like, that's why I think it's so important to communicate that, because let's say, even with my boyfriend, like, I'd be like, initially I'd be like, listen, like now it's fine, thank God. Now because we talked through it, but I was like, I feel like him and I basically live in the same building, but we spend a lot of our time together. So a lot of the times we like share the same food produce. But I'd be like, I feel like a lot of the things that go around like in our lives, it takes up my mental capacity, not yours. Like a lot of the like planning, and it's like such small things, but they add up. Whether that's like, okay, like we just had food, like wash dishes. Okay, we're going to go to the supermarket. What is missing? And like, it was all on me. And we had those conversations, and now he's much more aware, and like now it's like I trust him to do like what needs to be done, and he just does it so well now. But it's all about having those difficult conversations to begin with. I don't think Jen was having them.
Well, I also think though, I agree with everything you said, but there's a difference.
Yeah.
Andy wasn't a bad guy, but he was a narcissist. I think even if she had this conversation with him, I really don't think he would change. Like, even as she said, I think even if he's going to be a really successful stand-up comedian, he achieves everything he wants in life, I still think he's going to be a selfish, narcissistic guy. I'm sorry, but like, it's just him. It's his nature. So to me, the moral was, well, there was a lot, but one of the things is like, don't date a narcissist. Unless you are willing to put up with it and you're okay with like
And you're okay with living in his world on his terms.
Exactly. If you're okay with it, then okay. But if you're not, then he will never change. Like, these types of people, they never change. I mean, did Andy become more self-aware towards the end? Yes. But I think his nature is still very much, as he said, he's a comedian. That's why he wanted to be a comedian. His nature is to be self-obsessed, to seek validation, like, you know, to make a crowd love him, to make people love him and laugh at him, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but it's also even like when she was talking about how when they went to the museum, he would only talk about the things that he knew. And when they would reach expositions where he didn't know anything, he would try to shuffle past them quickly so he can talk about again how much he knows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying, but like, you know, your boyfriend's not a narcissist. So it's different. Yes, men can change. They should for the woman they love.
If they're a healthy human being, yeah.
Yes, that's different.
I agree.
And
but, so you think there's no hope for narcissists, though? I think that there might be. I think.
No. Okay,
I think. Do you think Andy is a narcissist, or do you think he has narcissistic tendencies, but he's normal on the overall?
I mean, even if he has narcissistic tendencies, right?
It's so difficult, yeah.
It's going to be with him for the rest of his life. And as you said, can he change? Yeah, but he's going to have certain narcissistic tendencies with him forever, in my opinion. And I think some women, like, he will meet somebody and she will really love him and she will be able to put up with it. Like, you know how everyone has their fatal flaw?
Yes.
That is his fatal flaw. And I think if he meets a woman who can put up with it and is fine with it, great. But Jen wasn't that woman. She's independent, and she never even wanted to be in a relationship, which I think actually brings us to our next point. Yes. The biological clock.
So, another part of their breakup, basically the entire book is actually about a breakup, so in case you guys didn't understand, but we're just talking about the intricacies of that breakup and what led to it, and one of them was the biological clock. So, Jen has a sister, and her sister is a lesbian, and she's married, and they want to have a child together. But to do that, she needed to do IVF and see how her egg supply was. And the clinic told her that basically you have a very low egg supply, and if it's probably genetic, so have your siblings check it too. She called her sister being like, you should get it checked out too. And as it turns out, she also had a low supply of eggs. Jen did. But in the clinic began like really pestering her, like, oh my God, like looking at her with such like pity and being like, do you have a boyfriend? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, thank God, like, please start like trying to have a baby now. And please, and then she was like, no, like, I don't really want to. And they're like, no, then you have to freeze your eggs. You have to freeze them right now, right this second. And she's like, hey, like, it's one thing okay, like if I could even take the time of work, which I cannot. B, it's like a pricey procedure. C, you literally have to go under and like inject yourself with all these hormones. Like, what do you mean? And the clinic just kept being insane about this. And Jen had this realization being like, but this was also from her relationship with Andy when, as I mentioned before, she was saying how if she had a baby, it would basically be her and the baby alone, even if she was with Andy. B, does she really want a child? Like, she was kind of questioning in the book, like, where does this come from? She's like, all my friends now are married and they have children. And she's like, and I love all of their children. But I'm tired of only talking about children as well. And I feel like there's more to life than just having kids. And it's my body and it's my rules. And yeah.
I think something important to preface is Jen never wanted to be in a relationship. She had a really fulfilling life, actually. It's just what started happening is all her friends started getting married, having children, and they ultimately obviously just started affecting her in a way like where she was like, oh, I'm really happy in my life, but everyone's having boyfriends, husbands, children, and I'm not. Am I weird? Should I just try it out? And then she meets Andy, and she does love him, and as we said, like, she does love him, and they have a lot of good moments, and so she stays with him for 4 years. But ultimately, she never really wanted to have kids. She never really wanted to get married, whereas Andy wanted to have kids. He wanted to get married. He wanted all these things, and she was never sure, A, and B, she had a partner who never even considered what all of these things meant for her. Like, not only did she not want these things, but if she were to have these things, all the responsibility and all the shit would be on her.
Exactly. And in general, I've listened to other podcasts about females, and all of them were saying basically that you give birth for yourself. As in, like, the child that you bring in is like, yes, even if your husband is amazing, he's trying his best to provide, the majority of the burden is still on the mother. Like, you carry the baby, you birth the baby feeds off of you. And even if you, let's say, formula feed, the baby still requires, like, the mothers. And it's, like, basically the book was highlighting how a lot of the things, A, it's like, do we need to have kids? B, the biological clock and, like, feeling pressure to have kids before a certain age. And, like, that's why we're kind of, like, more aware and striving towards. And C is, like, are we ready to put this kind of career on our, this kind of pause on our career and our lives? Like, is that something that we really want? And I mean, in my case, I do want to have kids, let's say. But I also think that we need to reframe our mindset over some women just choosing not to have a kid, because they're like, this is just not something that I'm, like, I need. To be honest, like, I don't really, let's say they're like, I don't really need to get married. I don't really need to have a child. Like, I'm happy the way I am right now.
Yeah.
And in general, having a child and a husband, I think I can see how for a woman it's more work overall. Like, whether that's like household work just increases. That's just the way it goes. Like, it's just, I don't know, our brains are just wired differently in that sense.
Yeah. No, I think it's important. I mean, this book really highlights it, I mean, I also, want to get married. I want to have kids, of course, but I think it's so important to do it with the right person rather than the right time.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the most important, one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. It's for life, and a lot of the work and responsibility will be on you forever.
Yeah.
So if you are unsure about the person you're with, then I just really, really encourage you to reconsider these things, because they are such big things.
Yeah.
And nothing makes me sadder than when I see really young girls who barely know somebody, get married, have kids. Sometimes it works out, but a lot of times it doesn't, because, they barely know each other, and they're just not that compatible, as it turns out, fundamentally, again.
Yes. And I also want to talk about, this is just a random tangent, but I was talking to Asela about it, I really don't like how some clinics, I went to this anti-age clinic, when they, like, really pressure you or scare you to, like, buy into their medicine or, like, a procedure. I went to this, like, anti-age clinic here in Astana recently, and, like, all of my test results, thank God, were in the norm, in the normal range. But they're like, no, but this is, like, slightly, like, they were still normal range, but they're like, but this is a bit higher, like 1 point higher than maybe it should have been. And they were, like, making me, like, for an hour and a half, this woman was drilling my brain so much. You know when somebody talks so much and gives you like so much weird information that you get stressed out and overwhelmed? And then like they let me out of the room and immediately they led me to the stand of the vitamins and then she took a basket for me. She started filling up like with so many things and basically like the entirety of what I bought because it was just so fast and I was so like I couldn't even think anymore. I was like, oh my God, am I like dying right now? Like because it was just such an inflow of information. And I left with such a feeling of like disgust because I was like, what the hell A did I just buy? B, like obviously now I have to use it. It was basically like vitamins. Like I was nothing like, and B, I was like I now have to use it. C, I was like that was so. You felt like you're used, you know, low key, especially when you feel like you're part of like this business marketing where they're like trying to sell you more things rather than just help you as a doctor would. And I related to the Jen's feelings of when she was feeling really rushed in the clinic, being like, no, you have to do this or you have to do that. And they, even afterwards, they still called her being like, when do you want to sign up for your procedure? And she was like, I don't want to do egg freezing right now. For me, and then I went to Korea for my checkup and they're like, listen, you're like completely healthy and fine. Like, and I was like, but I told them like, but they said that these results are this, and they're like, no. They're like very healthy and in the normal range. Like they're like, I don't know. They're like, maybe some clinics have a different way of judging their results, but here we do it like this. And it's like, it was like one of the best clinics in Korea. So
Yeah. No, it's wild. I once went to this not spa, like a medical spa clinic in London. If anyone wants to hit me up what it was, I can, because a lot of people go there and I always tell them not to go there. I'm not going to say the name, but anyways, I once went there to get Botox in my hands for hyperhidrosis because I have overly sweaty hands. And the woman who was doing it, I guess they're like doctor, she was like, oh, you get a free consultation. And I'm like, okay. She told me I needed to get so much stuff done to my face. Like so much. She told me I needed filler here, Botox here, a lift here.
Dude, I hate those kind of clinics. Like,
and I literally, but the thing is, she looked crazy, Jania. She looked like a cat that was... I don't know, like, not in a cool, sexy way.
She was one of those cat humans, yeah? Like, you know,
yeah, cat humans, yeah.
Up.
And I was like, you know, in my mind, I was like, why would I take advice from you? And also, her Botox skills sucked because it did not take, and I had to go do it somewhere else. And it was much better and much more pleasant and more effective. And even cheaper, I think, a bit. So, a lot of people go to this place in London, though, and I feel very strongly encouraged to be like, don't go there. They are crazy. They are not scammers, but I just think they are also in the business of...
They're trying to sell themselves and their products. And it makes sense if it's like a business model. But I think when you're a medical clinic or a medical like institution of any kind, that's not really morally correct to do. Like, especially...
At all.
Like, yeah.
Oh my God, dude. Like, when I looked at her, I was like, I think I'm good. Like, I'll take my chances. Anyways, so yeah, I think this book just highlights the importance of self-awareness because at the end, Andy does become more self-aware once he realizes a lot of things, and he does do he starts doing more selfless acts, which I thought were really nice. Like, his friend went through a breakup and he wrote a letter to him with some advice, or like he had this old neighbor that he invited for Christmas to his family's house, which was nice. And like, I don't know, he was nicer to Jen a bit, I think, but and also, like, the reason why the book is called Good Material is because obviously Andy's a comedian, but he was so cheesy and cliche, I think, with his material. It was never funny. And then when he actually realized a lot of things about his breakup with Jen, he sits down and he actually writes out a lot of things about himself, about his relationship and breakup as material for his new stand-up, and it takes off.
Yeah. I think his material finally took off when he became real with himself.
Yeah, like because I think good comedy is about observation and real observation of humans.
Yeah.
And like what you go through. And I mean, his life was hilarious. I was like, why are you not talking about this? I remember reading this and I was like, this is so funny. So yeah, just I think being more self-aware and thinking about yourself more in the context of others than others in the context of yourself.
I agree. I do think that this book also highlighted a lot of really relevant adulthood things, whether that's having a child together, growing in your career, maybe like being more responsible. That's like the step into adulthood. And
Being at different stages than your friends as well, I think.
yes, and I really like the way
Which
they
happens in your 30s, I
Yeah.
think, a lot.
I mean, even
And
now
that's
for
kind
me
of-
in my 20s in Kazakhstan, most of my friends
Yeah.
have a child. And
Yeah.
I mean, if for me, yeah, I mean, it's just like you're in different stages. I love their kids, but we're at different points. But
Yeah.
yeah. So how would you rate this book, Asela?
It was great. I think
Out of
Dolly
10.
is an amazing. Out of 10,
10 is
I
the
would
best,
give
1
this.
is the worst.
I would give this an 8. I think it was a great book. I think Dolly is probably one of. I think her and Zadie Smith are probably the most famous young authors of our time. And I think she's only going to get better. This book was good. It was funny. It wasn't like amazing for me personally, but I thought it was really good. I enjoyed reading it.
I think for me it's like a 7, purely because all the first chapters with Angie just moping around and just being completely pathetic was just destroying my will to live. And
I'm
also,
curious.
yeah,
In the audiobook,
Yeah.
do they do different voices or is it the author reading or how does it work?
they do a different voice. So the man is Andy, and then let's say if when the man sings or something, he also imitates like different intonations. And
Okay.
in the where it's Jen's part, it's a female's voice.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because I listened to the audiobook and you read it, Ida.
Yeah.
Physical book. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning into our book club of this month.
You should definitely read something by Dolly Alderton. And this is a good start.
And if you have any recommendations, we said this last time, but listen up again. Any recommendations for the month of May, we are open to reading the book. We also, this will be our last book club before summer in May because we are taking a break in summer. So this is your chance to recommend something juicy for us.
Slide into our DMs.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.